My name is Cody Powell, and this is my 4-H mechanics project. I bought this truck from a farm equipment auction nearby, and it was originally a work truck for the farmer's elevator in Wapello, Iowa. Just a quick little overview of this truck before I get into anything. It is a 1989 F350. It has a 7.3 liter diesel motor in it, and it is an automatic transmission with a regular cab and an 8-foot bed. When I originally bought this truck, it had a service box on it, which was not exactly what I was looking for, but I figured I could make a cool project out of it, and I've done that. This truck was a work truck when I bought it, and it was just a bare bones interior. It had no interior trim, didn't have a headliner, it didn't have cruise control, it just had base model leather seats. It was just plain Jane work truck. And so for that, I just wanted to kind of spice up the interior, just make it a little nicer for me, just as kind of a fun truck just to drive around town or go on errands and stuff like that. Also, when we bought it, it would not start on its own power unless the engine was warm. You'd have to put starting fluid down the air intake in order to get it to fire. And once it was running, it ran fine, but it just wouldn't start on its own power when the engine was cold. I spent about 3 days in the shop with my dad and our farmhand, and we went through and we replaced injectors, we replaced the fuel pump, and we replaced all the glow plugs. None of that did it, and eventually we just went online to see if anybody had known about it, and we found that it might be the glow plug relay. Went into town, bought a glow plug relay, slapped it on there, fired right off. And it works just fine, and it's started fine on its own since then. So things I discovered were wrong with it after I already bought it was I looked under the truck and it did not have a front drive shaft, which is a problem if you want your 4-wheel drive to work. I found a guy nearby that had a drive shaft laying around, bought it off of him, slapped it on, 4-wheel drive works just fine. Later on down the line, I was driving it around town, and for whatever reason, the batteries kept dying. I thought it was a bad battery, so replaced the batteries. It fired up fine the first time, and then after 2 or 3 trips, it would not start again. I went through the charging system and then eventually discovered that the regulator I bought was bad from the factory. So I bought a new one, put it on, battery charges just fine now. This truck was built with 2 tanks, and I like that just for extra range. You don't have to stop as much for fuel if you're on a long trip. And the rear gas gauge did not work. That was a pretty simple fix. There was a junkyard about a half hour away from where I'm working, and they had one that was just a plug and play, and it worked just fine right after that. With most of the mechanical problems fixed, I pulled the bed off, and as soon as the bed was off, I realized that there was an exhaust leak right at the end of the muffler. So went in, got a new muffler, put it on, everything bolted right up. Now, on to the meat and potatoes of this project, which would be this bed that I'm sitting on right here. The frame rails are made out of 4-inch C-channel, and then the cross members are made out of 3-inch C-channel. Is it overkill? Yes, but it's also necessary if I want this truck to A, last a long time, and B, be strong enough to survive the punishment that I'm going to put it through. I had been planning this project since before I even bought this truck, so what I did beforehand was I went into a 3D modeling program called Fusion 360, and I made a 3D model of this year and this bed size of truck, and then made a model of this bed in particular, just to see kind of a price estimate and a material estimate and a weight estimate was a big thing, just to see what all I would have to put into it. The top of the deck and the top of the bumper are tread plate. Other than that, everything else is just flat plate steel. So I was able to take all the plate steel pieces from my 3D model, flatten them out, organize them onto 3 5x10 sheets, and then I sent them into a friend of mine who works at a steel factory nearby, and he was able to cut them out, and he had them to me about 2 weeks later. I took design cues off of a CM truck bed with these angled lights here on the outside and up on the headache rack, and also with these cut corners. I had cut off the corners. That just gives me a better turning radius if I'm pulling a trailer, and I just think it looks a little cleaner than just a square flatbed. The first thing I did with the pre-cut steel pieces was made these recessed light holders, welded them into the plate that would be angled right here, and then welded those up on top, welded this plate in the middle along with the license plate holder, and then I just did the back first, tacked it, and left it at that. I did not fully weld anything until the entire skirt was on. Speaking of the entire skirt, I built this truck by myself with minimal help from other people, and so what I had to do was I put a jack on one end of the skirt to hold it up, pulled up the other end, tacked it, came back, tacked the other side, and then just made tack welds right along the edge of the skirt on both sides. Once the side skirts were on, my next project was the 4 toolboxes. I have 2 in the back and 2 in the front. And the back toolboxes are 14 by 14 by 20. The front toolboxes are 14 by 14 by 30. Next piece after that was the bumper, which again wasn't very hard. The tread plate I had to cut out by hand, but the bottom pieces where it angles up and in, those were also pre-cut from the factory from my 3D design. So once I got both pieces for the deck, I cut them out and then I welded them on. They're welded all the way around the edges and down the middle, and that's what's holding the skirts up, and they're also welded underneath directly to the frame. After the deck was the headache rack, and the headache rack I already had done. I had just been working on it. It was kind of a side project while I was waiting for the steel to get in, just to kind of keep the project moving. After the deck was welded on, I used this 1.25" angle iron, and I just went all the way around the edge just to kind of clean it up, make it look a little better. And then after that, rub rails went on both sides. Now, once all the construction of the bed was done, I pulled the bed off the truck, and then came electrical, and electrical was not fun. The wiring harness for this truck to power all the LED lights that you see lit up behind me was custom built by me, and it took me about 2 weeks just because I had to balance school and sports and everything else in the time that I was doing this, and it just took a long time to get it right. Another thing I decided to add just from a working standpoint was working lights, and those are the reverse lights up there. Those lights work as reverse lights when the truck goes into reverse, and I also have a separate switch inside the cab that'll turn those lights on, but not these lights. Paint was pretty straightforward on the bottom. It was just coat of primer, 2 coats of paint, and it was pretty much ready to be put back on the truck in about 4 days. Unfortunately, I did not get any videos of me painting the bed, but I did get a picture of it right after I got the first coat of gloss black paint on, which I will put up right here. While the bed was off the truck, I ordered a turnover ball from B&W Trailer Hitches, and I put that on just so this truck would be able to haul a gooseneck trailer, most likely a cattle trailer, or a flatbed, depending on what I'm doing that day. Once the bed was back on the truck, I lined up where the trailer hitch would go, and then I cut out a square for it, put in sidewalls, and put in a plate right on the bottom that lines up with the turnover ball hitch. Once the bed was back on the truck, I primed it with a coat of rusty metal primer, and then I went over it with 2 coats of gloss black paint and put in the lights, and that was just about it. Now that the bed was done, I could focus on the truck. Like I said, the truck came with a bare bones interior. It was a custom, and the guy who bought it just picked no options. Some things I was able to do was I found a junkyard that was about an hour north of me, and he had a XLT Lariat truck that I was able to get some parts off of, mostly the interior. I also took some of the cruise control parts, but primarily the interior is what I was focused on, just because it's got those nice cloth seats, and it's also got the full trim plus a headliner that I could take out of it. And then I used that headliner to make my own custom headliner, and that is what's currently in the truck right now. A couple of things that I would really like to add on to it are cruise control, air conditioning, stuff like that. Like I said, this truck is a 4-H project that'll be entered in my county fair, which is coming up in about a week. And I had some problems sourcing parts for the AC system on these trucks, so I just wasn't able to do it. Something else that I want to put on just for kind of convenience and just ease of driving would be cruise control. And that's just so when I'm going down the highway or if I'm on a long trip, I can just set cruise control and then I can just worry about steering and I don't have to worry about speed. I would like to add 2 backup cameras to this as well. I'm gonna have one right here by the license plate light, and I'm also gonna have one up there on the headache rack just so I can see kind of where I am if I'm backing up to connect to a gooseneck trailer, just so I can line that up without having to have an extra person there. So that pretty much does it for the short build video of this truck. I will be coming out with a longer video that'll probably be closer to about an hour to an hour and a half, and that'll be posted on my channel probably within a couple months, so be sure to be on the lookout for that. Until then, if you have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment, and I will see you all in the next video.